The Suicide Squad may seem like it has a lot in common with James Gunn's other superhero franchise, the Guardians of the Galaxy, but after you get past like the surface similarities, it actually has a lot more in common with the dark comedies of his earlier movies, specifically Super. So, written and directed by Gunn, who took over after all of the drama and controversy that surrounded 2016's version, which was written and directed by David Ayer, but also apparently written and directed by every one of the producers and executives at Warner Brothers. It ended up being a huge loss. Critics did not like it as much. Fans didn't like it as much. It does have fans, and more specifically, there are fans of Ayer himself that want to see, what his vision was. You might see Release the Ayer cut trending every so often on social media. So the Suicide Squad does a very smart thing of not being a remake, not being a sequel, not being anything like that. It's kind of just a mulligan. James Gunn was famously let go from Disney before starting work on writing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 over some old tweets that got brought up. Eventually, it was overturned, and he's back at work now, I believe, on the Christmas special and then Guardians 3. But Warner Brothers and DC snatched him up almost immediately, and reportedly, they gave him the choice of what to do. And he said he wanted to do the Suicide Squad. Makes a lot of sense. So where Guardians of the Galaxy is a band of misfits that are mostly good-hearted and good-intentioned, they kind of become a family. Suicide Squad is kind of the exact opposite. It's a bunch of just villains and truly heinous scumbags that get together to, serve the mission, and that's about it. Like, they don't trust each other as far as they can throw each other, but this provides a lot of room for James Gunn to explore like that dark humor that his earlier movies had, and you can still kind of get a little bit in the Guardians movies, but the R rating here really, I don't want to say lets him off the leash, because I think he's a really good writer and a really good director, and he has a good eye for action sequences whether or not there's a lot of gore in it. But here it's clear that like they took like the restrictor plate off, if you will, if you want to use a racing metaphor instead. No matter the rating, one thing that Gunn is really, really good at is building a strong ensemble cast. It's the strength of a ton of his movies over the years and has helped build the Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, into one of Marvel's biggest franchises. Is, that eye for talent and that eye for casting. And here is no exception. You have obviously the big leads who are back from the first movie. You have Idris Elba as Bloodsport, who is fantastic. Like, I wish he would do more of these. Like, when I see him doing this and think about the fun he probably had doing stuff like this and like Pacific Rim and like those movies, it makes me wish he did this more often. I would love to see it because he's just such a talented, charismatic actor. You also have, in particular, my favorite was David Dastmalchian as the Polka Dot Man, who really manages to stand out in a crowd of new characters. I thought he was incredible. And, he's one of those actors that shows up in so many things and you don't think about it. And then here, he really gets these big scenes to show off, and it's incredibly effective. And he gives a lot of soul to the movie, if you will. I know, and I'm going to talk for a second here about Daniela Melchior, who plays Ratcatcher 2, who basically everyone I've seen has said is the heart and soul of the movie. And that's pretty true. Like, the two of them combined really break up the violence and the mayhem that otherwise pretty much is nonstop through here. Of course, can't talk about this movie without talking about John Cena as the Peacemaker, a role that it kind of feels like he was born to play. And like, James Gunn just has an eye for talent on casting old wrestlers to comedic genius roles here. We had Batista as the comedic revelation in Guardians of the Galaxy. Now we have John Cena as Peacemaker, who was so good that before the movie even came out, they were filming the Peacemaker HBO Max show. So, like, tells you everything you need to know. He does not disappoint. And the constant back and forth between him and Bloodsport in particular is just spot on. Also, really quick, King Shark, voiced by Sylvester Stallone, in just a a role he was born to play. It was the voice of King Shark. It's like perfect. And I don't want to sit and, side by side comparison this one to the 2016 version, because it sounds like David Ayer's version didn't really get a whole lot of like a chance. Like there was a lot of meddling, there was a lot of everything, rewrites, reshoots, everything going on. So like it's hard to sit here and nitpick that one, not knowing what was interference and what was the actual movie. But the thing that this movie does, I think the biggest accomplishment of this movie compared to that 2016 version, is the rehabilitation of the character of Rick Flag. Because to me, when I watched that first Suicide Squad, Rick Flag was just such a run-of-the-mill, boring, milquetoast type of, like, oh, okay, he's the military leader guy, and that was it. Like, yes, he loved Enchantress, wanted to help save her, but, like, it was a pretty wooden character. It was like all the beats had been taken from the character, and it was just he was just supposed to, like, be there and just push this plot forward. And here, it really feels like he gets a lot more time to shine. He gets to be a three-dimensional character, and I was really impressed with, getting to see Joel Kinnaman do this type of performance. Like, he went from being like what I thought was like the worst part of Suicide Squad from a character standpoint to here he's like one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. And that kind of just speaks to the overall success of this movie. It is not going to be for everyone. It is hyper violent. It is pretty profane, and it's relentless. It's a relentless take on a comic book movie. And it's funny because it's a lot like the old Trauma movies. Like, this feels a lot more like a Trauma movie than it feels like a big budget superhero movie. It's like someone just gave James Gunn like $150 million and said, make the best Trauma type movie we've ever seen. I would not be surprised at all if we find out that James Gunn's next movie, after doing Guardians 3 and the Christmas special, is a Harley Quinn solo movie, or like a Birds of Prey sequel. I would not be surprised at all, because the way he writes Harley Quinn is very in line with Birds of Prey's characterization compared to the first Suicide Squad. So that wouldn't surprise me at all, but truly it seems like he could do anything he wants for them. I'm going to give The Suicide Squad an A and say that this, for comic book fans in particular, is a must-watch, because it does so many things outside of the framework of just a comic book movie. I think the action sequences, I think the performances, I think the humor is just enough. It's a little over 2 hours, but the time goes by so quick, the plot's moving along so fast, and the characters are just so likable that you don't really think twice about it. Definitely see it in theaters if you feel safe to and if you can. But it looks like it's, I haven't watched it on HBO Max yet, but it seems like it's going to be one that holds entertainment value no matter where you watch it. That's what I thought. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of the movie, or how it compared to the 2016 version, what you want to see next from James Gunn in DC, or if you want to see him go on to something else. Please let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I will be back soon.